All right, let's jump right in. We usually think of our work life and our personal life as, two totally separate things. But what if they're not? What if the quality of our relationships is the secret ingredient or maybe the poison that's fueling our ambition? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this hidden link between who we love and how hard we strive.
And this, right here, is the main idea. It's a bit of an uncomfortable truth to sit with. See, it's not just about feeling happy at home so you could be productive at the office. The thinking here is that it goes way, way deeper. The actual character of your ambition, how intense it is, what it's aimed at, is being forged in the fires of your private life.
So, how does this whole thing work really? Well, that brings us to the first big concept, this idea of an unspoken flow of energy. I want you to picture this invisible current that's running through all of society, connecting what we feel in private to what we do in public.
Yeah, this energy, it doesn't just stay put. What starts out as a quiet moment or an emotional connection, or even a really painful fight between two people, it eventually gets amplified. It shows up loud and clear, shaping corporate cultures, moving financial markets, and even steering the course of politics.
And this little drawing, it just brilliantly illustrates the whole argument. It uses this powerful metaphor of fire. The core idea is that the fire in our private lives, that intense emotional energy that gets created between people, it gets transferred. It literally becomes the fire we see in the public square. Now, the point here isn't about gender or pointing fingers. It's about this transfer of energy. That private heat, it has to go somewhere, and it spills out and shapes our world, for better or for worse.
So that leads us to our next section, which we can think of as our emotional engine. Imagine your relationships are the power plant, constantly generating the fuel for your ambition. The real question, though, is what kind of fuel is it making?
And this is where things split in two. On one side, you've got healthy, solid relationships that create this premium-grade fuel, stability, purpose, real confidence. But on the other side, toxic or empty relationships, well, they produce a pretty volatile, low-grade fuel. We're talking insecurity, a fixation on status, and that desperate need to prove something. Both can make the engine go, for sure, but they're headed to very different places.
And this is a key term we've got to define. When ambition is running on that toxic fuel, it's called compensatory ambition. On the outside, this looks like winning, right? The promotions, the money, all of it. But it's all powered by an inner emptiness. It's not really about building anything of value. It's about trying to patch up an internal wound.
So we've got two kinds of fuel, and they create two very different kinds of fire. Let's really look at the real-world impact of these two ambitions, because this is exactly where private pain turns into a very public problem. What's so fascinating is how it completely shifts your motivation. Instead of wanting to create something amazing, the goal becomes just dominance. Instead of producing real value for others, it's all about getting that external validation, that pat on the back. And that's what opens the door to cutting corners, to unethical shortcuts, to that win-at-all-costs mentality that can absolutely poison an entire industry.
Now here's a really powerful idea, the multiplier effect. The suggestion is that the toxicity doesn't just transfer one-to-one. This formula you see, it's not meant to be mathematical, it's psychological. The chaos and pain from a broken emotional core actually gets amplified when it's channeled into professional drive. It becomes more intense, more dangerous.
And here's exactly how that ripple effect can play out. Step one, it starts with just one person's private instability. Then, because that person is driven by this need to compensate, they start taking unethical shortcuts. Step three, that behavior infects their team, and boom, you've got a toxic culture. And finally, when you have enough of those cultures, you end up with fragile systems, companies, markets, whole institutions that are secretly built on a foundation of sand.
Okay, so this all brings us to a really critical point. It's time to shift from looking at society out there to looking at ourselves, right here. This whole idea demands a little bit of self-reflection.
We have to throw out this old tired question. The whole work-life balance debate just completely misses the mark. The argument here is that our relationships are never a distraction from our success. They are the very source of the energy that drives it.
So this is the real question we need to be asking. Where is my drive actually coming from? Is it coming from a place of deep-seated purpose and stability? Or is it being fueled by insecurity, by my ego, by a burning need to prove something to someone? The answer, honestly, changes everything.
All right, now let's zoom all the way out to the biggest possible picture. Because this isn't just a personal issue. Not by a long shot. The claim here is bold. The collective quality of our ambition is what actually builds our civilization.
And you can see this beautiful, positive feedback loop. When people are coming from a place of emotional security, their ambition is constructive. They build things to last. They work together. Secure people build secure companies and resilient economies. Love and stability, it turns out, don't make you soft. They purify your ambition.
But of course, the opposite is just as powerful. When toxic relationships are widespread, you get widespread compensatory ambition. And what does that build? It builds systems riddled with burnout, with collapsing trust, with one crisis after another. It builds a world that might look shiny and successful on the surface, but is actually incredibly fragile, always just one push away from shattering.
And so that's where we'll leave it, with this one massive final question. Because what starts in the human heart, in those quiet, private moments, it never stays there. It scales up, it ripples out, it shapes our companies, our economies, and ultimately, our future. So the real question for all of us is this: the fire that drives us, is it the kind that illuminates, or is it the kind that just burns everything to the ground?